Well, welcome everyone. Happy Wednesday. Thanks so much for joining us for another instance of Facebook Live today. As you know, is all about Study Hall. So we have a very special guest for us today, who I will introduce in just a moment. Just as a reminder, every other Wednesday is trivia, and today just happens to be the Study Hall. So we flip-flop those back and forth. Today's topic is all about sweet wine and judging sweetness in wines. And for that, we have Janet Campen with us today. Janet, how are you?
I'm doing great, Christian. Really excited to talk about sweet wines, sweetness levels. There's such a broad range of wines at various sweet levels that we taste not only in our diploma classes, but at level 2 and 3. Just really excited to help students with something they may not be as familiar with.
Yeah, I think we were just talking before the show that this is an area where most students struggle, right, is judging sweetness levels. So a timely presentation.
Yes, indeed. In fact, the two wines that I'll be tasting today with you guys to talk about how to assess the sweetness levels, these were actually wines that I worked with diploma students on our level 4 diploma program for the WSET. And were two wines that were particularly troublesome areas for assessing those sweet levels. So we're going to talk about it today, and this not only applies to anybody at the diploma level, but level 3 as well, or anyone studying for Court of Master Sommelier, certified advanced levels. This can also help you as well, since they do use similar scales.
Awesome. So we're ready to get nerdy. So I'll go ahead and switch over to your presentation and take it away, Janet.
Okay, so let's get started. First, just looking at those sweetness scales, just to kind of orient ourselves with the terminology that are used at the WSET level, and these are very similar to the court's scale as well. At the level 3 and level 4, they're pretty similar. Dry, off dry, medium sweet, and sweet, although at the level 3 they also have luscious that they've added onto that. Now with the diploma, they have taken away the luscious category and have just lumped it all together with sweet wine. Probably sometime in the future they may do the same for level 3, but mostly today we're just going to be looking at the dry, off dry, the mediums, and then the sweet category. Those luscious wines we won't really be talking about today, but those are going to be those stickies, those Ruther Glen Muscats, Tokai Essentia, those really sweet kind of syrupy wines, and some of them fortified. We won't be talking about those today, but we'll be looking more at the regular still wines. So an area that a lot of people have trouble with is actually in this dry, off dry range. And the reason for this is that a lot of wines, especially ones that are in a warmer climate, tend to have riper fruit. And the thing is that in our minds, we always associate eating a piece of fruit with sugar. So when we experience some of these fruity aromas and flavors, we might be perceiving a wine has sugar in it when it actually doesn't. Or if we're aware of that, we may say, oh, this wine doesn't have any sugar. I'm just being fooled by the ripeness. So this is kind of an area where even students at the level 4 diploma can have trouble. So the wine that we're going to look at right now, it's actually a Gallo Chardonnay, usually about $6, $7 here on the west coast of the US. So my tip for tasting a wine is to pay attention to the attack, the mid palate, and the finish of the wine. By attack, I mean when the wine first hits your mouth, do you notice any perceptible sugar? And does that sugar carry through while the wine is still in your mouth or through the finish? Now with a dry wine, we're not going to feel any sugar on any of those categories. But with an off-dry wine, we should feel it just at that attack and maybe nowhere else. So we'll taste this Gallo Chardonnay. So right away, that attack, as soon as it hit my mouth, I got just a kind of pinprick of sugar. And again, this is not the ripeness of the fruit that I'm assessing. It's the actual tactile sensation in my mouth, my tongue, my gums, everything that is able to assess sweetness. It's more of a tactile sensation. And so that's what I'm paying attention to. Now that sugar, it does drop off pretty much almost immediately. So this is why it can be difficult to judge off dry, is because it does drop pretty quickly. And off dry wine, it's not meant to be a sweet wine. It's not meant to have sugar as a major component of itself. So that's why it can be difficult to judge that, whether it's dry or off dry, because the sugar does go away pretty quickly. Now, it doesn't carry through on my mid palate, and it doesn't carry through on the finish. So I know that it's not going to be in that medium or sweet category. One of the tricks, if you are having trouble with judging if there's any sugar, is to hold your nose, run your tongue over the top of your gums. Do you get any kind of sweetness? That's one way that you can assess if there's any sugar without, having any of the aromas influencing your judgment of that. So if I do that, I do kind of still have a little bit of sugar in my mouth, and I can taste that sweetness. But again, it's not enough to call this a medium sweet or a sweet wine. Okay, so another area that people tend to have trouble with at the diploma level, and even at the level 3, is the difference between medium dry and medium sweet. Now let's first think the difference between dry, medium, and sweet wines. A dry wine is a wine without any sugar in it that we can perceive. A sweet wine is a wine that can pair with a dessert because it is so sweet and the sugar is such a major component of that wine that you could have it with the sweetest dessert, like a really sweet ice cream, anything that has a lot of sugar in it with the food. You want to pair with something equally sweet. So I'm thinking like Sauterne or Tokai here is what would be in that sweet category. But there are wines that are not sweet enough to pair with a dessert that are that sweet. And so these would be in that kind of medium area. And when we look at medium, there's 2 categories, medium dry, medium sweet. And the way that we can tell the difference between these is actually there's a clue in the names of these categories. So again, we'll look at the attack, the mid palate, and the finish. So the sugar will carry through from the attack through your mid, medium palate, but we want to pay finish. Does the wine tend to finish drier? Does that sugar kind of fall off as we taste it? If it does, then that's medium dry. But if that sugar does carry through towards the finish or through the finish or even after the finish, but is still not as sweet as a dessert, then it would be medium sweet. So your clue is in those categories. Medium dry, finishes dry. Medium sweet, finishes sweet. So we'll take a look at a wine that gave some particular trouble with our diploma students, a Jurançon, so made from Petit and Gros Monson. So this wine, some students had some trouble calling it medium dry. Some had some trouble even calling it sweet. But this wine is actually in that medium sweet category. So we'll taste it. So I notice that sugar on the attack. It's continuing through my mid palate while the wine is still in my mouth. After I spit, I can still taste it. I can still feel that sugar. If I hold my nose, I'm no longer smelling those aromas and getting them retronasally. So I'm still feeling that sugar through the finish. However, this wine would not be well paired with a very sweet dessert like a creme brulee. It doesn't have that high of a sugar level when you compare it to other wines such as a Sauterne or a Tokai. And one of the clues for this is that even though it has really high acidity, it helps cleanse the palate of that sugar. The body is not quite as full as you would get with a wine like Sauterne or a Tokai or a port. So pay attention to the other factors if you're considering between medium sweet and sweet. So a medium sweet wine, it will have sugar that goes all the way through from attack to finish, just as a sweet wine would. A sweet wine would go through attack and finish. But the body isn't there. It's not as heavy. It's not as full and round the way that a wine with a heavier sugar in it would be. And just think, if I was going to pair this with something, would I have this with maybe a lighter dessert? Maybe just a nice cheese plate. Maybe some sweet fruit. But are you going to put it with something that has a lot of sugar in it? Like a cake or a pie or a tart, something like that. If it doesn't, then stay at that medium sweet level. Okay, I think that is all I have.
Well, that's
We're judging
great.
that.
That is fantastic. Thanks so much for those tips. And you're absolutely right. I remember when I was going through the WSET curriculum and through the diploma, sweetness was always so tricky, especially in the presence of acid as well. So these were phenomenal tips. Great study hall. Thanks so much, Janet, for leading this today. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. Little tip, the things you learned today might come in handy for next Wednesday's trivia, which is all about sweet wines. So hopefully you took some notes. Monica Vescovi will be here next Wednesday, 2 p.m. California time for a trivia. So make sure, stop back by next Wednesday and participate. In the meantime, Janet, I want to thank you so much for leading today. Hopefully we'll have you back very soon. Everyone else out there, stay safe, drink well, and see you next Wednesday. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.